The NHL Draft has finally arrived, and on today's episode, I'll be giving you 3 more prospects to keep an eye out for at pick number 18 for the Dallas Stars. We'll talk about some offensive threats that could be joining the Texas hockey family on today's episode.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Stars Media, coming to you on this Thursday, July 7th, the official day one of the NHL Draft. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by today's episode and for making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube as well as your favorite podcasting platform. Remember that we are free and available no matter where or how you listen. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. You can find and follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis. You can also find our show as well, just a simple at Locked On Stars. But let's jump into today's episode talking about 3 forward prospects going into this 2022 NHL Draft taking place in Montreal tonight. Yesterday, we covered 3 defensive prospects that I think the Dallas Stars could select at pick number 18 in round 1 or even possibly in round 2 as well. And today, we're flipping the script on offense because even though the Dallas Stars have some good defensemen at the NHL level and even at the prospect level in the AHL, always need more defensemen in the prospect pool, but there's also kind of a need for some secondary scoring, especially at the wing position. So we've picked 3 really good prospects to take a look at on today's show, starting number 1 with Brad Lambert out of Finland. And it goes without saying that Dallas does have a pretty nice recent history of drafting some really talented Finnish players, Roope Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, and even just acquiring good Finnish talent like Jani Hakanpää, Joel Kivirantas from Finland, so on and so forth. And Lambert is a guy that is 6 foot tall, 179 pounds, and can play both the center and right wing position. So right wing is that position I touched on just a few moments ago, saying that the Stars could greatly benefit from some secondary scoring at that spot. Joe Pavelski mainly taking that spot over this past season on the top line, with Roope Hintz taking the center spot and Jason Robertson, of course, playing at the left wing position. But then after that, it was kind of a free-for-all and a carousel of different players. And so clearly, a guy like Lambert, or really any prospect that could get taken here in the 22 draft for the Stars, will not be on the NHL roster to start the season, but this is something that could maybe get solved eventually down the line. And I think the Stars could make a move in free agency to acquire a talented top 6 right wing player who could come in and fill that spot on the roster and play alongside Tyler Seguin and possibly Jamie Benn if they want to put Jamie Benn and Seguin on the same line. But regardless of the timeline in which he could appear at the NHL, Lambert is still a really intriguing prospect with a lot of upside. He's a guy who's kind of fallen all over the place in certain mock drafts. He's one of the best skaters in this draft from many reports that I saw, which we know how important skating is, both just from looking at guys on the Stars like Miro Heiskanen and Roope Hintz, but also just across the NHL. Some of the guys that are the best players in the league are subsequently the best skaters. Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, even a prime Alexander Ovechkin was one of, if not the best skater in the NHL. He has great puck control, and he also is great in one-on-one rushes. So this is a guy who can be an offensive threat at a very fast pace. This is a guy that can get down the ice similar to Roope Hintz and kind of make plays happen on his own, especially if his teammates aren't quite keeping up with him at certain moments in the game. He can somewhat generate offense for himself at pretty much any moment during a particular game. Whenever he may be on a rush offensively, he's always a guy you have to keep an eye out for, especially in one-on-one situations. But if you give him teammates on the ice, then he can really pose a threat by either shooting or setting up a teammate with a really nice shot. And even though I do say that, that is something that has been marked as one of the I guess, red flags going into this draft for him is his need to utilize his teammates a little bit more. He has shown flashes of being able to distribute the puck and be a playmaker, but there are also several instances where he's kind of hogging the puck and maybe trying to do a little too much on his own. And of course, that's just something that comes with maturing and just growing as a player and as a person, learning to utilize your teammates, because that is such a huge key in today's NHL. Is as good as some players can be individually on their own, at the end of the day, you desperately need to rely on your teammates and use them in order to generate plays and make really smart, good-looking hockey IQ motions and plays. So that, and just overall consistency, as good of a scorer as he can be, there have just been moments during his time in Finland where his production will just kind of teeter off and become somewhat not existent, which again is something you can expect from a guy at his age. He's still incredibly young, still developing, and as he's continued to grow and develop, he's gone against stiffer competition. So it naturally just makes sense that there could be some droughts in his scoring and droughts in his production. But all in all, he has a ton of upside, and his size is, pretty good. He's not a massive player, but 6'179". He could probably and would likely bulk up a little bit as he would get closer to a potential NHL debut. So he's a guy with a good mix of size and speed and scoring ability that I think any team would be lucky to have within their organization and would love to hopefully see fill a top 6 role in their lineup at some point in the future. And I've seen it reported that he will likely go somewhere in the top 15, but could possibly fall to Dallas at 18. And if he does fall there, it would not surprise me if he's one of the names that gets called for the Dallas Stars at the 18th overall pick. This guy is, like I said, to kind of start the segment, has been a total toss-up. He's been all over several different mock drafts, and I think part of it is just those issues with consistency and his ability to play alongside other people and utilize his teammates. But again, I think those are things that can be somewhat easily fixed and can be addressed. So wouldn't shock me if he's taken before Dallas picks at 18th, but if he's there, I think that Jim Nill and company will certainly consider, or probably have considered, taking him if he's available. Well, coming up next, we will take a look at a different prospect, one born in America. We will talk about Rutger McGroarty after a quick break. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given Coconut Brownie Chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar flavor you love in a delicious, chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. Coconut Brownie Chunk Puffs are only here for a limited time, so go to Built.com right now to make sure you don't miss out, because they're going fast and they taste amazing. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides a ton of different health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Go to Built.com right now and use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that promo code is LOCKED15, and you can use that at Built.com to get 15% off your order. All right, on to the next one, talking about prospect number 2 of today's episode. Spent the last segment talking about Brad Lambert. Now we are shifting our focus to an American prospect, Rutger McGroarty from Lincoln, Nebraska, 6 foot, 205 pound center. And this is another guy that comes by the way of the United States developmental program, a guy who has grown up around the game of hockey, and he will be playing at the University of Michigan later this year. So this is a guy who still has his college playing days ahead of him, but Michigan is one of the more prestigious college programs here in North America. So he's going to a great hockey school, great hockey program, where his development will likely continue to trend upwards, and whatever team ends up drafting him tonight or tomorrow will likely get a really solid player who has some really solid years in college here over the next few seasons. But like I said, he grew up around hockey despite being from Lincoln, Nebraska, which many people might not associate with the sport of hockey. But his dad, I guess Mr. McGroarty, was a hockey coach. So just pretty much all he did growing up was eat, sleep, and breathe this sport. And so just due to that alone, this has, put within him an incredible work ethic and drive. And that's something that many scouts have praised him for throughout this entire draft process. And one of the big focal points that I've seen on him throughout doing all this research going into these episodes, this is a guy who has an incredibly high motor. As cliche as that sounds, that is absolutely essential and something you love to see from a young prospect like this, who likely still has a long way to go as far as skill, but he still has tons of skill in his arsenal. He's drawn comparisons in some reports I've seen to Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers and Toronto Maple Leafs, and that is not a bad comparison at all. Hyman was a 54-point scorer this past season with the Oilers. And overall, I think McGroarty has a lot to like and a lot to offer. He's got really great size, as I mentioned, being 6 foot tall, 205 pounds. So a guy that's not going to get forced off the puck very easily, but also on the other end of the ice could pose a threat on defense despite playing the forward position. Austin Broad of FC Hockey says that he has the most dangerous shot in the entire draft because of its power and its accuracy, which is a huge compliment. And there's a lot of offensive talent in this draft. And to say that he has the most dangerous shot, I think carries a lot of weight. And again, besides his work ethic, that is one of the other biggest focal points of McGroarty going into this draft is his shot, because not only is it powerful, it is also incredibly accurate. He has just tamed his game and gotten it down to a level where he's able to shoot the puck hard, but it's going to go on net, and it's going to be really difficult for goalies to make stops on it, especially if it's through a screen or if there's multiple bodies around the crease, blocking their view or making things more difficult to see by obstructing the things that they are able to lay their eyes on. So that can make a guy like McGroarty an absolute threat night in and night out for whatever organization does end up drafting him. And with that size, he can be very effective in the neutral zone and the defensive zone. So he is a little bit of a two-way player, as many people have reported going into this draft, which is going to be very attractive to just about any organization that could pick him if he is available whenever it is their turn to make a selection. And really the only knock I could find on his game consistently across the board is his skating. And not that it's necessarily bad or a red flag saying, that he shouldn't be drafted or his stock should fall, but it's just one of those things that could definitely be improved. Anytime you see a bigger guy playing in the NHL, if they're a good skater, that probably came with a lot of hard work and a lot of really good coaching from a skating coach. And I think that's something that McGroarty would likely need once he's drafted, but that's something that can be very easily addressed and likely will improve just as he continues to grow and play in more competitive leagues with bigger and better players. His ability to skate will probably grow and mature along with that. So this is a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of red flags attached to his name. And if anything, he just seems to have a high ceiling, just mixed with that really nice shot, really good playmaking ability, and the ability to play well on the defensive side as well. If he can really nail down his skating and become an efficient skater that can move with just about anyone he's on the ice with, then I think he has an opportunity to become a really efficient top 6 forward for a long time in this league. I think he could, be one of those guys that could play for 15, 20 years at his, if he reaches his peak and if he reaches his max potential. So with that said, with all these really good things to say about a guy like McGroarty, most people I've seen have him going somewhere in the first round. But there are also a few people, and I think Elite Prospects was the biggest, not necessarily, negative on McGroarty, but there were some people with Elite Prospects that had him going as low as 51st overall. So it's really hard to peg where this guy is going to go. Some people had him near even the top 10 of the first round just because of his shot and his offensive ability, but also there's people that have him falling into the second round on day 2. So very likely that he could be taken before pick number 18, but also likely that he could be available at pick 18. And a lot of people have said that if he goes at that 18th overall spot or pretty much anywhere after the top 15, that it could be counted as a huge steal in this draft. And as we've seen recently, the Stars kind of have a knack for getting those players who are maybe overlooked or undervalued going into the draft, and they end up just completely annihilating whatever competition they play the next season, with Wyatt Johnston, Logan Stankoven being 2 very recent examples. So keep an eye out for the name McGroarty on draft night. Remember, that is Rutger McGroarty. Keep an eye out for his name as the Stars select at pick number 18, if he has not already been taken off the board up to that point. Well, coming up next, we will talk about our last prospect of the day. We will talk about Jonathan Lekkerimäki out of Sweden. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is also brought to you by our friends at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand that their warehouse happens to carry? You have access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They have everything that you could possibly need for your car or truck: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck could ever need at rockauto.com. All right, talking about our last prospect of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments down below who you would like to see the Stars take at pick number 18, or if you would like to see the pick traded. I know that's a possibility as well, that the Stars could look to move up in the draft or trade the pick entirely for a nice addition to the roster. So let me know down in the comments below what you think will happen with the Stars' 18th overall pick in tonight's draft. But if they are going to be picking a player, let's talk about the last potential player that could come off the board and be the newest member of the Texas hockey family out of Sweden, Lekkerimäki, Jonathan Lekkerimäki. 5'11", 172 pounds, right wing, and often regarded by many people over the past several weeks and months as the best Swedish player in this draft because he is an elite scorer. That is the biggest praise on him, and the thing that everyone is continually harping on, talking about this kid leading up to tonight's draft, is that he puts the puck in the back of the net, and he does it often, and he does it with a ton of force and just an incredible style of offensive play. He handles the puck well. He can navigate the offensive zone with ease, and it just seems like, based on what I've read, that he seems to be playing, chess while everyone else is playing 4D, or checkers while everyone else is playing 4D chess blindfolded. He just makes things look incredibly easy, and he is one of the most efficient scorers of any prospect that's expected to go in the first round. He's one of those guys. I read this. I believe it was on an article, a draft profile on the Hockey Writers website, saying that a lot of times his teammates will give him what they call the Alex Ovechkin treatment, where they're just trying to feed him the puck and trying to give him opportunities to score. We see that even now, especially on the Washington Capitals power play, where there's just plays drawn up to get Ovechkin, the puck and give him a one-timer opportunity to score. We see that a lot of times with Jonathan Lekkerimäki. He's just a guy that you want to give the puck to, similar to a guy like Connor McDavid or Nathan MacKinnon, guys like that, the true incredible offensive threats of today's game. It's not too far-fetched for many people to say that they think Lekkerimäki could be, 3, 4, 5 years from now, one of the more efficient and better scorers of the NHL. And he's pretty skilled in passes despite all of the scoring that he does. I thought while I was reading him, when I kind of was forming my initial thoughts on him, I thought, okay, well, he's a great scorer, but is his playmaking any good? Does he share the puck with his teammates? And the reports say that he actually does a pretty good job of that, even if the sharing of the puck typically results with the puck coming back to him. He's a guy that actually has a pretty good hockey IQ and can distribute the puck quite efficiently. It's not the best part of his game, but it's certainly not a negative or red flag to be concerned about. It's something that he actually does quite well, which can make him even more of a threat, playing anywhere in a top 6 role for whatever organization drafts him. But again, he plays that right wing position, which could be absolutely crucial for the Stars looking to add depth to that position over the years, especially as Joe Pavelski starts to phase out of the NHL. And who knows what else could happen, who will fill those roles. You could move a guy like Stankoven to that right wing position, but this is a guy who is a right winger by default. He is coming into the league marked as a player in that position. So this would be a great guy for the Stars to look to go out and get. And really the only negatives on his game come with his defense and his physicality. It's one of those things defensively where he just isn't as engaged on that end. He's a guy who's always looking to score. So he could be a good option on the breakaway, but he's not always going to be that guy that disrupts plays or makes life difficult for the other team while playing defense. That's something that he will need to grow into and lean into. And you could also attribute some of that to his size. 5'11", 172, certainly not the biggest player in this draft. Of course, like any other player, he'd likely bulk up and get a little bit bigger as a result of eventually looking to join an NHL roster. But sometimes he can be a little bit of a pushover on the puck and could give up the puck or commit some turnovers just due to a lack of size. But he's also not afraid to try and use his body for physicality to try to, lay a check on someone along the boards. It's just something that he needs to learn to channel and control and get a little better at. And of course, that's something that, again, just comes with time as you mature and grow as a hockey player. This is another guy that is kind of all over the place. If you look at mock drafts, he almost seems like a lock to go in the first round, though. But I've seen him projected to go near the bottom of the top 10 to the very end of the first round. So this is, again, another guy that wouldn't be shocked if we hear his name called through the first 17 picks, but also wouldn't shock me if he is available at pick number 18. And if he's there, he's another guy that I would not be disappointed if the Stars went out and got, because he has all of the offensive potential in the world. And that just seems like something that the Stars need. They need a guy to come into the organization and be that electric scorer, the spark plug to the offense, that whenever he's on the ice, all other 5 skaters on the opposition need to be aware of his presence, and they're going to do everything they can to try to shut him down. And it seems like Jonathan Lekkerimäki could be that guy for the Dallas Stars in the future. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcasting platforms. We are getting, closer and closer to 500 YouTube subscribers every single day. So thank you guys for the continued support day in and day out and tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with, of course, my reaction to the first night of the draft. If the Stars make a move and pick someone, we will talk about that player. And if they make a trade or make some other move, we will talk about that as well. Whatever happens, night one of the NHL draft regarding the Dallas Stars, we'll be covering it right here tomorrow on YouTube and your favorite podcasting platform. You can also find and follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis and our show as well at Locked On Stars. But we'll see you there, Stars fans. Enjoy the draft. Enjoy your Thursday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.